Yeah, right.
You know, Al-Qaeda runs the country with U.S. support, right?
Well, Obama support, yeah, right.
No, with U.S. support.
With the lead from behind.
No.
But
let's be very clear about this, right? The war on people like Muammar Gaddafi or Assad, who are both dictators and terrible dictators, right? That was a war that was consistent with the aims and plans of the neoconservatives, and before that with Reagan and other people, basically with Western imperialism. And more importantly, and first of all, I'm not pro-Obama on this. Obama is the head of the United States, right? His interests are to protect the United States. It's to protect it in Africa, where he wants to destroy the African Union. It's to protect it in Latin America, where he wants to destroy Morales, Carrera, and Chavez. He wants to do these things. So let's just be very real. Obama's not our dude.
It's good that you brought up those two names.
That's my son. He was on Fox News. We're tearing him up.
So, life in Venezuela. Was life in Venezuela better before Chavez or after Chavez?
After Chavez, for the masses of people, it's after Chavez. That's why they voted him in.
Much better, really.
Why they vote him in democratically.
Evo Morales,
right?
was life better under before Evo Morales or after Evo Morales?
Better, yes.
Better.
Why do you think these democratically elected states stay in power in those countries? How do you think that, in fact, after Chavez, you have Morales winning, Carrera winning, Daniel Ortega winning, democratic elections, right? Because the South American people actually like these systems, right? They like them, right? And you guys are afraid. America's afraid.
No, we're not afraid of it.
Don't say
Then why does America react the way it does to these countries? Because back in the early 2000s, they actually tried to overthrow Hugo Chavez in a coup that was sponsored by what was the that NGO front that sponsored like the attempted coup against Hugo Chavez?
It was AFL-CIO was behind it. Labor unions were behind it. The U.S. military was behind it. The United States government, State Department was behind it.
But let me
State Department and Hillary Clinton.
Let me ask you a very simple question. Name me one country in the world that has what you call socialist system. I mean, in fact, socialist system never existed in any country in the world ever.
So what would you call it?
Well, we call it in USSR, Eastern Bloc country, North Korea. It's Cuba today. Totalitarian regime or dictatorship.
How's the accumulation process work?
It's very simple. I'll explain. This is how it works in a totalitarian regime versus free countries like our own. See,
capitalist countries.
You come over here, you express your opinion freely, even though you're surrounded by a ton of police.
How did the Soviet Union break up? How did it break up?
I'm talking about...
I'm asking you a question. How did it break up? How did the Soviet Union break up?
Will you allow me to finish? You ask me a question. What's the difference between...
There's a very important difference.
Well,
how did the Soviet Union break up? The second largest power in the world, how did it break up?
It
break up right through a peaceful rebellion, etc.
No. I'll explain.
That's exactly what happened.
Do you want me to explain how? I'll explain. Look.
He's an anti-communist comprador.
By the time, of course I'm anti-communist. I'm big time anti-communist.
No, I'm just saying you're a comprador anti-communist.
Comprador. Russian people are not. There's Russians. There were never any starving Russians or billionaire Russians before the fall of the USSR. That's true. As a fact, and now you have Russian people for.
Well, let me show the difference before
organized crime,
women being exploited into Western Europe.
I can go point by point over all these issues. Let me start with the simplest one, probably the easiest to understand. For example, you want to get some staples at home, right? To feed your family, to feed yourself, like bread, like butter, those proverbial bread and butter. Okay. So, how do you think you can get bread and butter in USSR, especially if you don't live in Moscow and St. Petersburg or Leningrad back then?
You threw it through the bread lines, the historical bread lines you're talking about, or basically you would have credit system of some sort in which you're basically allowed to get the basic products you need, the staple products.
So you brought the bread line issue, right?
Lines, yeah.
So. You know that there were bread lines in USSR.
Yes, I do know there was a shortage of production in the 1980s.
There was shortage of everything.
Right, yes.
have everything.
Of consumer goods.
Of
Why?
consumer
But
goods.
why?
Well, because of the system that they had.
Wait, what was the system though? What
The
was
system,
doing?
you
What was the forces of
you
production
name
going
it.
to?
You named it.
That's not-
It's called centralized planning.
No, it had-
Central planning.
The central planning failed in the
Yes.
USSR,
Uh-huh.
right? Because fundamentally the USSR was in a Cold War, had to compete with the United States at an
Military.
industrial level to produce a military system which it could not sustain. How much of the GDP of the USSR went to actually the military industrial complex of the USSR?
Almost the whole country.
Almost, yeah, a
Yeah.
very strong
Why?
percentage. Right, because it was under a perpetual war state from the US
who?
system. The US. What are you talking about? There was
weren't the Russians, when we talk about the Second World War, even though they were bastards who started the Second World War,
They
war
didn't start the Second
war-
World War.
war
Last
together
time
with
you
the
said that
Germans.
Germany started the war.
Well,
Yeah,
they
you-
started
right.
together. Yeah.
No, they didn't.
Well, but let's forget about
read
that.
up
That's
your
it.
So,
history.
but
You gotta
but,
read on
but
your
we
history,
were
honestly.
but we were allies during the Second World War, right? I mean, we were helping the Russians. If not for the United States
Why?
help Lend-Lease, they would have lost the war. You know that.
That's not true, actually.
Well,
There's actually a lot of
Really?
tactical questions,
Really?
strategic questions. The Germans were defeated and had the actual
you're about to
invasion
raid
of
the
the war.
fucking camp, my nigga.
Alright, let's go.
What the fuck? Number 3. Raid number 3.
I just want to say fuck you and fuck America. Cameron!
Yo, where's all people at? Yeah, he was in the camp. Yo. Yo, Freddie! Is there an exit? What's Freddie?
Hey, Brett! Brett! We're going this way!
Yo! Ready?
I guess it's time to come out to
You see this walk right? Why don't you 10 go to the Where's nothing here?